is Histories and Mysteries. I'm Ashley.
I'm Jessica, and on this week's episode, Ashley is going to be talking about the murder of Pamela Carnahan, and I am going to be talking about someone you'll hear about later.
Very mysterious.
Yeah, Ashley wants to know what I'm doing, and I'm refusing to tell her.
It's basically just torture and rude.
Yeah. It's been 2 weeks since we've
I know
done this.
Cody showed me this meme that said, I'll tell you tomorrow, and then it said, tell me now or I'll throw up. And that's 100% me.
Accurate.
Very accurate. Tell me now or I'll throw up.
I love that so much. But yeah, it's really weird not recording for 2 weeks.
Yeah, that was my fault. Sorry, everybody, for not having an episode out last week. I was very sick and just not doing well. So we decided, I asked if Jessica would mind if we took the week off because I just could not.
And I said, absolutely not. But she didn't listen to me. So
that's where it is.
So blame Ashley. No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding. No, we love Ashley. We need her to be good.
Thanks. Oh, all right. So this is an interesting story. And I don't know, this one creeps me out more than some of the other ones I've done. And I'll tell you why at the end.
Okay.
Because if I tell you now, it gives away the whole thing. So I got my sources from Southern Gothic.
Ooh, you like them.
I do. That's a good show.
Yeah, they're turning into my All That's Interesting.
And then Monsters and Critics, which is a website. It's a pretty cool website. And Wikipedia for some of the prison info I have. So, well, because he goes to a certain type of prison that I had never heard of, so I had to look it up. So I have a little bit of information on that. So,
okay.
All right. So Pamela, originally Heinbach, was born in 1980, which means she was only 6 years older than me, to Robert and Peggy Heinbach. Her cousin and sister talked really fondly of her. They said she loved to make people laugh. She loved to bake. And her cousin said that her parents treated her like a princess.
Was she the youngest?
I don't know. It didn't say, but I think they just like her personality and stuff. She just said she was a little princess. So when she was little. So
yeah, no, that's good. That's cute.
Yeah. She also had some sort of developmental disability. So school was really hard for her. But eventually her family moved from their hometown because of her dad's job. He was a cop. And it turned out to be a blessing because her new school had a lot more support for her. And they said that, she never wanted her disability to define her. So she worked really hard. She was never behind and she was able to graduate with her class.
Oh, that's so nice.
Yeah. At 24, Pam met Daniel Carnahan. My spell check changed it to cardigan, but it is Daniel Carnahan. She met him through her brother, and everybody just said it was like they clicked right away. They were an amazing couple. After 2 years of dating, Pam and Daniel married and they moved into their first apartment together. And then in 2009, Pam and Daniel welcomed a beautiful little girl.
Aww.
Yeah. And, when their daughter, they never said the daughter's name, and I think they did that on purpose. So I'm just going to refer to her as daughter. When their daughter was old enough to go to school, they lived by the bus stop. So generally Pam would walk her to the bus stop and then, she'd get on the bus and then Pam would walk home. Well, on May 9th, 2014, the school bus driver was dropping off her daughter and noticed that Pamela, who was always there to pick up her daughter, wasn't there.
Oh, no, that's not good.
Yeah. And so the bus driver contacted Pamela's sister-in-law who taught at the school, so he knew her, and said, Pam's not here and I don't want to just leave her daughter here. So the aunt said, we'll bring her over to my house. So he does. He brings her daughter over to what is her aunt's house. And her aunt calls Pamela's husband and says, like, hey, do you know where Pam is? And he said no. And he was worried. So he decided to head home. And so his sister said that she was also going to call their dad and have their dad meet them at Daniel's apartment.
I never know what to think in these stories. Like in a book when you're really invested in something, so you read ahead to spoil the surprise.
Yeah, so you can read comfortably after that.
I feel that way right now.
Because your first thought is the husband, and you want to be like, oh, but then you don't want to be like, oh, if it's not him.
Yeah, because that's so normal. Like that's so stereotypical, right?
Yeah.
So
Yep.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Yeah.
So Daniel and his dad met at their apartment, and when they walked in, they didn't see anything too weird, but they did find some bloody shoe prints. And the shoe prints led into the hall and then into the back room where they found Pamela lying on the ground in a pool of blood.
Oh.
And it was a lot of blood. Like they knew she was gone. So Daniel tried to run to her side, but the dad, who used to be a cop, told him not to touch anything for the investigation.
Yeah, no, that's
he said
the best.
Yeah, and he said it was obvious she was gone, so it's not like he could render aid to her. The investigator said that there was blood spatter everywhere. One detective said it was the bloodiest crime scene he had ever seen.
Holy crap.
Yeah, she was found fully clothed with her leg kind of like bent sideways, and it was an extremely vicious attack. She was stabbed multiple times. They also found an empty condom wrapper under one of her legs and a small blue piece of a latex glove under her leg. They also found 2 or 3 pieces of a broken knife handle, and they searched her kitchen, and it wasn't her knife. So the attacker brought gloves, condoms, and a knife. So this was very planned out. It wasn't a spur of the moment opportunity type thing.
That's so bizarre.
Yeah. And they didn't find any signs of forced entry. And oddly enough, Daniel and his dad said that the door was locked when they came over. And this type of lock, this type of lock deadbolted from, it was a deadbolt, and you had to have a key to lock it from both the inside and the outside.
Oh, that's suspicious.
Yeah, and it was locked when they got there. So they had to unlock it to get in, but there was no sign of forced entry. So either someone ambushed her at her door when she was coming in, or she knew her assailant.
Yeah, but then wouldn't they have had to lock it afterwards?
Yeah, well, they also couldn't find Pam's wallet or her apartment keys.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So obviously, as we were just talking about, they first looked at the husband. They bring him down to the police department to ask him a few questions. They asked him to walk through his day. He said it was basically like any other day. The only difference was that today he dropped Pam and the daughter off at the bus stop on his way to work because it looked like it was going to rain. So they didn't want to walk there. He went to his job. He worked at the school as a janitor. He got there at 7:40 a.m. He said he called her several times throughout the day. She didn't answer, but it didn't really worry him because I guess she wasn't always good at keeping track of her phone. They examined his hands and arms for blood. They didn't find anything. And had he done this crime, he should have been covered in blood. So they should have found something.
Even if it was hours later?
Well, yeah. I mean, no, not if it was hours later, but there's more to it that we'll get to in a sec.
Okay.
But they also found security footage of him working at school all day in the same clothes.
Oh, okay. That makes sense then.
Yeah. So it's not like he showered or changed his clothes. He went to work in a set of clothes and he left work in a set of clothes. So it couldn't have been him. So the cops decided to go back to the crime scene to see if they could find something. Unfortunately, the apartment didn't have cameras, but the next door business did have two cameras. But it only showed like walking up to the apartment, but it didn't show like the actual apartment door or anything like that. But in the footage, they did see their daughter getting on the bus and Pam walking back to the apartment. So again, they figured either she had to be ambushed at the door or someone had to have a key. So they're like, well, who would have keys?
Oh, yeah. They live in an apartment, right? So
Yeah.
maybe it was the superintendent.
Well, that's what they thought was a maintenance man.
Ooh.
And they did see a maintenance man on the camera going back and forth from his office to the apartment building. So they asked him to come down to the police station, and he did. He didn't have any injuries, and apparently from this attack, she showed that she had a lot of defensive wounds. And like, so they think that they would have had some kind of wounds on them as well.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad she was able to fight back at least.
Yeah, she did. She fought hard. But yeah, so he didn't have any injuries, and they did ask for a DNA sample. And he said, yeah, that's fine. So they got one, and they were pretty sure it wasn't him, but they decided to test the DNA just to be sure.
Yeah, no, of course.
Yeah. So they started canvassing the apartment complex to see if anyone had seen or heard anything, but no one had. So their thought is, okay, well, are we actually dealing with a very violent, sick stranger that did this? Which to me is terrifying.
Yeah, that is really terrifying. You think that you're safe in your own home, and then
yeah. So the crime lab did come back with details of the bloody footprints they found at the crime scene. They found out that they were Air Force One, size 10 and a half. And they also had the autopsy results back, which showed that she had been dead for 6 to 8 hours before she was found, which means she was murdered shortly after she dropped her daughter off.
oh, that's horrible.
And I found two different sources on this. One said she was stabbed 14 times, and one said she was stabbed 20 times.
That's a huge difference.
Yeah. So either way, she was stabbed 14 to 20 times on her face, neck, and body.
Oh,
Yeah.
I don't. That's so cringy. Like, obviously, somebody being stabbed is super cringy, but the fact that it was the face and chest,
Yeah.
I just
The face gets like the face gets me. She also had several defensive wounds, and they also found a bite mark on her hand. So this bite mark, they were like, okay, could this be a lead? Could there be DNA on this? Some saliva. So they swabbed it to get DNA, to try and get DNA. But unfortunately, DNA testing, they said, takes about 6 to 12 months.
Why rush it?
Well, I mean, if every murder case rushed it, So
there's got to be something they can do. Like, figure out a better system, guys.
I know. So during this time of waiting, detectives kept asking around, but nothing really comes of it. And then 4 weeks later, a fisherman found a body in the Red River.
Oh, that's weird.
Yeah, it was, I'm probably going to say her name wrong. And I heard it several times, and I even wrote it like how I think it would sound, but I still feel like I'm going to get it wrong. But Shatiraka, and her last name was Rumor. And the autopsy confirmed that she had died of asphyxiation. And so it was a murder. And her car was found right by Pam's apartment. And in fact, there was a path along the tree line that went right from Pam's apartment to the apartment complex where her car was found.
Oh.
And it was very unusual for the city to have two murders like this in such a small geographical area. So then they thought, well, is it possible that we have a serial killer? And they ended up calling the FBI to see if they could connect these two cases.
Are you doing this on purpose?
What?
Like finding stories where the police actually called the FBI?
No, I know. I was watching this and I was like, oh, It happened again.
Like every week.
Yeah, I've gotten some good police officers lately.
Good.
Gives me hope. So they did subpoena Shatirika's phone records and see that her last caller was was a man named Brad Shangsong. He was a married father who worked for the National Guard, and they tracked him down and called him in, but Brad denied even knowing who she was. And they were like, but dude, you called her. Like,
Yeah,
we have the phone records.
Come on.
And then in a turn of events, he's like, all right, yeah, I killed her, but I don't know Pam.
What? Oh my God.
So they did take a DNA sample from him to see if they could match it with anything from Pam's case, and charged him with second-degree murder for the death of Shatirika. But on another DNA note, thankfully, the DNA from Pam's crime scene only took 2.5 months, and they got it back.
Oh, good.
And they were able to pull a DNA profile from the latex glove and the knife, and it didn't match Brad.
Oh.
But it did match someone in the CODIS system. And the name of the man was Julius Garnett. And he had several prior arrests and convictions, and even had an arrest for kidnapping and false imprisonment.
That name sounds so familiar.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Huh. I don't know. Huh. And he was staying with his sister at the time, who had an apartment right by Pam's. And apparently they had spoke to his sister when they first started canvassing the neighborhood, and she lied and said it was just her and her kids living there. She did not say that Julius lived there. So they ended up getting an arrest warrant for Julius and a warrant to search the apartment. While searching the apartment, they found blue latex gloves, the exact same brand of condom that was found at the scene, and shoes that matched the pattern on the scene. They obviously didn't find any blood on the shoes, though, because it had been like several months since the murder. So, wearing them and stuff.
Did the sister know?
I don't know. They never say. And they said that when they questioned her and they were like, okay, well, this guy is clearly violent, clearly dangerous. So they're like, you need to tell your brother, you need to contact him and tell him to turn himself in, so it doesn't end up messy or whatever. And she's like, I have no idea where he is. So
of course you don't.
Right.
I mean, she said that he wasn't living there either.
Right. So I don't know if she knew and was trying to protect him, if she didn't know and just thought the cops were out to get him, I don't know.
What? I know it might not matter, but it might also matter. What was their ethnicity?
They were Black.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So not not trusting the cops. Yeah.
Yeah. And the cops, out to get them. So that makes sense.
Yeah. And I can see how, that community would feel very persecuted and not trust the police because, with everything that's going on and has gone on for years and all that stuff. So I can see why she would be a little hesitant to just turn her brother over, right?
Oh, of course. And why he would run.
Yeah.
So
they did start to post his photos all over the community, and they got the media involved saying, turn yourself in. And I guess the pressure got too much for him. So 24 hours later, he turned himself in.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. He waived his rights and told the police that he'd never been to Pam's apartment. They said he was really cocky, and they were like, nah, man, we got DNA. And he was like, nah, man, I wasn't there. I don't know what to tell you.
I know. DNA does not lie.
Yeah. So they did end up upping his charge to first-degree murder. July 11th, 2016, his trial began. And prosecutors said that he had been watching her, that he knew her routine, and that he picked her out.
Ew. I hate everything about that.
And the thought is that he rushed her at the door and then pushed her inside at knife point. I read a couple of things that said he attempted to rape her, but I think she just fought back so hard that he just started stabbing her instead. And he stabbed her so hard that he broke the knife. And throughout the whole thing, he maintained his innocence, and the defense strategy was to blame Daniel, the husband.
Why?
I guess that's the only thing they had. I don't know.
But how did they blame him?
Was saying that like he did it and that his alibi doesn't check out, even though they have like video
Oh, I
evidence.
thought you meant that they were using him as the whole it's his fault.
Oh, no.
That he killed her.
that he did it. Daniel
Okay.
did it.
Oh, okay. What the fuck?
So Pam's family said that Julius was just looking around the courtroom, smiling through the whole thing. And Pam's family, her cousin and her sister, they are fucking tough bitches. Like one of them was like, just put me in a room alone with him. And I was like, I would not fuck with her. Like she is going to get shit done. But the jury deliberated for 3 hours and came back with guilty.
Oh,
he was sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. This is awful. During sentencing, they have time for the victim impact statement.
Yeah.
Pam's dad was up there talking and said, "You are the lowest piece of crap on earth." And Garnet screamed out, "I'll slap the shit out of you." Her dad responded with, "Did that make you a big man? With all due respect, I have no respect for you. I can't do to you what I would like to do to you." And then Garnet said, "Come on and try. I'll fuck your stupid ass up."
Buddy.
Yeah. So immediately he was taken away.
Like, that's not going to help your case.
Right. He was taken away. He was brought back. At this point, Daniel, the husband, was going to have a victim impact statement, but after seeing all that, he decided not to. It was too hard.
Oh.
Yeah. So Julius was put in Angola prison in Louisiana. It is apparently known as one of the roughest prisons in America. In fact, its nickname is the Alcatraz of the South.
Whoa.
And it is a maximum security prison farm. And I had to look up what this was. And one of the things that I read when the judge carried down his sentence was that life in prison with hard labor. And I was like, that's a thing still?
Yeah. And that honestly reminds me of like Bonnie and Clyde. Because like I'm pretty sure Clyde went to a labor camp.
Yeah, well, so I looked up these farm prisons, and it's basically what it says. It's a farm, and they're basically forced to farm, and the stuff that they grow, they feed themselves, and then like other prison systems, and anything else that's left over, the government can sell to make some money off of them. And it's like you don't have an option; you have to work the farm, and they even will. Like I guess lease them out to work on private farms if need be.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and it's like and I was like, okay, well, how many of these are there in the United States? And there's quite a few in the United States. And
really?
Yeah. And Canada used to have it too, but you guys outlawed it in 2009. But a lot of people want to bring it back because they want the free farm labor. So I was just shocked. I had never heard of this before.
That's crazy. That is really strange to think that it's still around.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And there's there's a shit ton in Texas, which is not surprising.
Not surprising.
So there's 3 in Alabama. There's 1 in Alaska. There's a shit ton in Arkansas, 4 in California, 4 in Colorado, 3 in Florida. Looks like 5 in Georgia, 2 in Hawaii, the Louisiana one, 2 in Mississippi, 3 in North Carolina, and then like 700,000 in Texas.
Jeez.
Yeah. So, yeah, I was shocked by how many there were.
Yeah, that's a little shocking.
Yeah. Yeah. So Unfortunately, that is the story of Pamela Carnahan's murder. And the reason why I said it was one of the more terrifying ones I've done is because he literally was a stranger to her. And the severity and violence of the murder for someone who didn't even know that person is terrifying.
It's so personal, especially stabbing.
Stabbing on 14 to 20 times, and so much so that you break the knife.
Yeah.
The only thing I can think of is that he wanted to rape her, and when he couldn't, he got pissed. But I think it's terrifying that, like, just a stranger with that amount of viciousness, you know?
Yeah, it doesn't make much sense.
No.
It's very beyond the typical MO for something like that. So it's very odd.
So, all right, now tell me your story before I throw up.
Okay. So I got my sources from All That's Interesting. And they have a podcast. It's called History Uncovered.
History Uncovered.
So everybody knows. Yeah, really cool. I started following them on Instagram because they popped up on our feed. And then I was like, I was on All That's Interesting looking around. I'm like, oh shit, it's their podcast. So that was really funny. So go listen to them, but also listen to me because I get sources from everywhere else too.
There you go.
So I also used Records and Archives magazine and then medium.com. So let's get on into it. This is a really cool story.
I'm excited.
It's a badass bitch. And it's all about Tilly Devine.
Ooh.
Yeah. She started her career as a sex worker in the London slums, but she and her husband, Big Jim Devine, emigrated to Australia in 1920. Tilly Devine discovered that she could legally start a brothel in Sydney thanks to a legal loophole, and she soon established a thriving chain of bordellos there.
Oh, cool businesswoman.
Yeah, she's like real on top of her shit.
Yeah.
By selling drugs like cocaine and opium, her husband helped out with the business, and Devine swiftly rose to prominence in Sydney's criminal underworld. Devine developed a bad reputation due to her illegal line of business and her violent feud with another female gang leader. And her name was Kate Lee.
I have a cousin named Katie Lee.
Oh,
well, actually, she's married now, so her last name is no longer Lee, but
it's neither here nor there.
Exactly.
Over the course of her legal career, Devine was detained more than 200 times.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And the last few decades, though, were very quiet for her, which is, you would think is nice, but I don't think she enjoyed it.
Gotcha.
She was compelled to liquidate all except one of her properties. And in 1970, she passed away alone and destitute.
Oh.
No. So she was dubbed the worst woman in Sydney.
Oh.
Yeah, she bad. According to the Dictionary of Sydney, Tilly Devine was born Matilda Mary Twiss on September 8th, 1900 in South London. She left school at the age of 12 to start working in a factory, stay in school, because her family was obviously struggling financially at the time. Early 1900s, right? So Devine, though, made the decision to enter the sex industry and started prowling the streets of London's glitzy West End in an effort to climb above her lowly status. She met James Edward, Big Jim Devine, who was an Australian Imperial Force serviceman stationed in London during World War I, about the time she turned 16. And just before she turned 17, they got married. And soon after, they had a son. Little baby boy.
Oh, I say, oh, wow. But then I think in the early 1900s, I don't think it was that weird to get married that young, right?
No.
Or am I thinking like too
No.
far back?
No, I think honestly, it was pretty common even at that
Okay.
time. Yeah. The newlyweds' marriage had been rocky from the start. They were aggressive to each other, both verbally and physically, which was made worse by the fact that they were both heavy drinkers. Devine continued her job in sex work, despite the fact that she was now married because it was so lucrative. So, like, why wouldn't you?
Mm-hmm.
And Big Jim even encouraged her and acted as her bodyguard.
Bodyguard or pimp? Like, was he nice? I mean, was he nice to her about it, or was he like controlling?
I don't know. I mean, their whole relationship just seemed pretty tumultuous.
Yeah.
So I think it was kind of like a means to an end.
Gotcha.
Like, you better do well so that we make money.
Gotcha. Okay.
According to the New South Wales State Archives and Records, when World War I came to a close, Big Jim was transported back to Australia, and Devine left her son with her parents and accompanied him aboard the Waimana, which was the war bride ship. On January 13th, 1920, she landed in Sydney, and she soon started to establish a reputation for herself. She resumed her sex career after moving to Australia, charging a premium rate of 10 shillings for each meeting. I don't know how good that is.
Yeah, I don't know either.
Please let me know.
Well, you did say a prime rate, so it must be pretty high.
Yeah, for the 1900s, probably. Her spouse served as her chauffeur, pimp, and getaway guy. And to make extra cash, he started selling opium and cocaine.
Oh.
Devine frequently encountered legal issues during this time. She was detained at least 79 times between 1921 and 1925 on suspicion of sex work.
Oh my gosh, that's a lot in just a few years.
Yeah. And she was also detained for using profane language.
Oh, naughty, naughty.
And violence. She was described by the police as a prostitute of the worst type and an acquaintance of the worst types of prostitutes, vagrants, and criminals.
Oh.
So, rave review.
Well, and I wonder how much of that was she really was like a horrible person, or she was a sex worker and so they just didn't like her. You know what I mean?
And because she was a successful woman.
Yeah.
Soon, Big Jim and Tilly Devine began seeking for alternative sources of income that would keep them both out of jail. Then they discovered the Police Offenses Act of 1908. This is so smart. The law forbade men from owning brothels or from making money off of sex workers, but it mentioned nothing about women.
Nice. The one time they forgot about women and it works out for women.
Oh, yeah. So the flaw rendered Devine's madame status entirely acceptable and legal. She was the proud proprietor of multiple brothels all across Sydney towards the end of the 1920s. She was so successful that she earned the title of Queen. Okay, one sec. Lulu, the part of the city where she mostly operated.
Okay.
It's literally like WOOLLOOMOOLOO.
Wow.
Wooloo.
I like it. That's a fun word. Wooloo.
I know.
I don't know if we have any Australian listeners, but if we do.
We do.
Oh, we do? Let us know if we're saying
we
that right, because it's fun.
It is really fun. Or it's Wooloo Woolamulu.
That's a pretty good little Australian accent there. I'm pretty
Was
impressed.
it?
Yeah.
Aw.
I'm pretty impressed.
Been watching too much Bluey every day. Oh, I'm kind of proud of myself too. Until I have to listen back to
You're
it.
gonna be like, oh, Ashley's lying. No, I thought it was pretty good.
Aw, thanks. So she hired a gang of criminals to serve as bodyguards for her workers, which is nice. Naturally, she made a lot of enemies while running her business, with Kate Lee being her most infamous foe. By the time she achieved popularity as a madame, Kate Lee, popularly known as the Queen of Surrey Hills, had already achieved considerable success. Lee had likewise become wealthy through a life of crime, but she did it in a totally different industry: alcohol.
Oh.
Australian law forbade the sale of alcohol after 6 p.m., so Lee established a prosperous underground market that did. Although she made the most of her money through bootlegging, she also owned several brothels and sold drugs.
Wow. She must have been super wealthy.
Yeah. She allegedly wasn't a drinker, though, despite what she did for a living. Due to their shared involvement in the same illegal transactions, the two criminal bosses frequently crossed paths. Their animosity became so fierce that they even engaged in multiple street fights.
Oh my gosh.
Isn't this great?
This is great.
Their razor gangs, so named for the brutal blades that their members wielded as weapons, were also so well known that their encounters came to be known as the Razor Gang Wars.
Oh my gosh.
Is that wild?
That's crazy.
I can't believe I've never heard of her.
Me neither.
She sounds buck wild. Atlas Obscura claims that Devine and Vera Lewis, a friend of Lee's, got into a fight in 1929. A newspaper at the time said Lewis alleged that Devine scratched her, and getting her teeth on her little finger would not let go until the police intervened.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And honestly, like, my toddler bites my finger.
It hurts.
It hurts. How are you guys so strong? You're so little.
Why are your teeth so sharp?
I don't get it. Two of Devine's men were ambushed by Lee's gang the same year, and they escaped to the Devine residence to prepare for an impending additional attack. One of Lee's best men, George Gaffney, was shot dead by Big Jim when Lee's gang arrived back at the scene around midnight. Since he was defending his land, he was found not guilty of murder, yet the act only served to fuel Tilly Devine and Kate Lee's rivalry.
Yeah, I bet.
By 1936, the brutal street fights between the two women's razor gangs had become such a problem that Sydney Police Commissioner William McKay struck a deal with Lee and Devine. If they stopped, the police would ignore their other unlawful activities.
I bet they didn't stop.
The woman concurred. But even though Devine was able to carry on with her many enterprises free from police intrusion, other factors finally caused her career to decline.
Okay, so they did agree to do it.
Yeah.
Okay.
On the basis of cruelty, Tilly Devine filed for divorce from Big Jim in 1943. She ultimately decided she'd had enough after 27 years of a violent marriage that saw Big Jim charged with trying to kill Devine when she discovered him having an affair in the 1930s.
Wow, good for her. That must have been terrifying in the 40s.
Yeah. She fell in love with Eric Parsons right away, but their union was also marred by domestic violence. She shot him after a drunken dispute just before their wedding.
Oh, shit. Did he die?
Charges were dismissed when Parsons refused to testify against her. And nevertheless, he married her in May of 1945, despite his reservations, and they remained together until he died 13 years
Did
later.
she kill him?
No, it just says his passing.
Oh my gosh. I'm sorry. If someone shot me, I'm not even your friend anymore. I don't even want to talk to you. You shot me.
Right?
That's crazy.
And can we also just remember that she abandoned her child?
Oh yeah.
Like, fuck, lady.
Whatever happened to that kid? Do you know?
I don't know.
Okay.
I'm certain there was like not much.
Yeah. Hopefully his grandparents raised him.
Oh, I'm hoping they did.
We're going to say they did and live in a happy little world like that.
Yes. Tilly Devine was required to pay $20,000 in back taxes in 1955.
Wow.
She was compelled to dispose of all but one of her properties in order to comply. In a period of years, she went from being one of the wealthiest women in Sydney to being on the verge of starvation.
Did you look to see inflation, what 20,000 is now?
No.
I'm going to do it right now.
Okay.
1955, you said?
Yep.
I need to know.
Okay.
$221,000 or $221,023.13.
Holy crap. That's a lot. Yeah.
Okay, I just needed to know, but continue.
Okay. Her final brothel closed in 1968 after being firebombed by rivals.
Holy shit.
I know. Soon after, on November 24th, 1970, Tilly Devine passed away following a fight with cancer and severe bronchitis. Devine was once one of Australia's most infamous ladies, but the general public scarcely noticed when she passed away. Few people came to her funeral, and no one cared to drink when one woman suggested a toast in her honor at a nearby bar.
Oh, that's sad.
Yeah. Her obituary in the Daily Telegraph read, "A vicious, grasping high priestess of savagery, sexual indulgence, obscenity, and whoredom. She died friendless and alone, and for that she must be pitied. But if they hold a wake for her, the sorrow will be slobber and crocodile tears. She was a wretched woman."
Oh my God.
That's horrible.
That is vicious.
Yeah. Tilly Devine had a much different take on her own life in an obituary she wrote for herself, as reported by the Daily Mirror. "Give a dog a bad name and it sticks. I wasn't as bad as I was painted. There's lots in Sydney who will miss me, even coppers." And that's the story of Tilly Devine.
That is a wild ride.
Wasn't that crazy?
That is crazy. That obituary, man. Holy crap. That's rough. That's a rough one.
Wild. Oh yeah. But
wow.
Yeah. So
I loved it.
Joke for me?
I don't. Do you have a joke for me?
Thanks.
You're welcome.
I don't.
Oh, jeez. Well,
Do we just carry
yeah,
on?
I mean, this wasn't my story was pretty dark, but your story was fun.
I thought my story was dope.
Yeah. Super dope.
Sip it up.
Well, if you want more of us lovely ladies, you can find us on Instagram and Facebook and YouTube. That's one.
There's it.
There it is.
And if you would like to rate and review us, you can do so on Spotify and Apple Podcasts.
Yay. Well, thanks everybody for listening, and we look forward to bringing you 2 new stories next week. Bye.